All right, everybody, welcome to the 344th edition of the Holy Backboard Podcast. I am Dustin here in sunny Rip City, and I got my man
Sage chilling live and direct. We had to do some more content, man. The draft's almost here, so this this draft content's kind of running its course. So we want to get as many episodes as possible before the big day of the NBA draft and later this month.
I mean, it's not just the draft, it's having the number 3 overall pick. And in my lifetime, I was born in 85, been consciously, shut up, you're old as hell too, been consciously aware of the Blazers since about 1990. And to my knowledge, I don't think the Blazers have had a top 3 pick since 1980. I know they had a bunch in the 70s outside of 2005, which they had the 3rd pick and they traded down to 6, obviously passing on Chris Paul and Darren Williams to an extent. And then in 2007, getting the number 1 overall pick, taking Greg Oden, obviously passing on Kevin Durant. So this has consumed me in the most positive way. Like as a new father, you have all of these new responsibilities. You've got your own fears. How are you going to raise this child? He started to turn over at night, so making sure he's has a pocket way to breathe, just all these fears, but all these hopes and, joy, a ton of emotions. I'm also a husband. I'm also a friend, a son, also got a job. So it's important for me to have things that I can take my mind off of, that I can just at night sit down, watch some YouTube, look at some mock drafts, dive into these players. Like the Blazers are my hobby life. Like Blazers and Oregon Ducks football. Like that's what I make time for. My time, there's not a lot of it right now. So what I try and do is those are the two that I really want to dive into. We were discussing this beforehand. I haven't really had time to watch a lot of the, baseball or Blue Jays baseball. I've only caught 2 WNBA games this year. So it's just a different time. And I'm loving it. But also the Blazers are that important to me that I'm making time for them. And what it comes down to is this draft is so exciting. The number 3 overall pick, that's, I think too many people are just oh yeah, 3rd pick in the draft. Look at history, players that have came at that 3rd pick. It is disgusting what that pick has landed over the course of time, whether it's Alonzo Mourning, Michael Jordan. I mean, you can go back to Jason Tatum, Joel Embiid. There's hits and there's misses, but at the end of the day, that pick is producing, right? And the Blazers now have a chance to really set themselves up for the long term. I will say this as a caveat before we dive into this. It is a bit heartbreaking, anxiety-inducing, just a little frustrating that we landed this asset. I would say the 2nd best asset the Blazers have had in my lifetime, behind the number 1 pick in 2007. That there is a fear that they could trade this pick for a fringe all-star, a player who's never even made an all-star team, just to appease a superstar player who's about to turn 33 next month. All due respect to Damian Lillard, but this is a massive asset, and I hope the franchise, the front office, they treat it as this massive asset because it doesn't come around often. Clearly, 3 times it's happened since I've been born, and I'm pushing 40, right?
Yeah,
it doesn't happen.
I know.
So don't just give it away to make the 2nd round of the playoffs. I know we are in a win now society. I know we want results now. We don't want to wait. But shit, Sage, we've been waiting since 2000 for a contender. That's 23 years. I can wait 5 extra years. I'm fine waiting 5 more years. We've already waited 23. What's the rush now? Just to get to the 2nd round and then push that timeline back another decade? That I'm not cool with. So I want to keep this pick. I want to see what the Blazers can do with it. However, the purpose of this episode is there are a lot of scenarios that could happen. Obviously, landing 1 or 2 would have been ideal. You can control your destiny to a limit if you have those picks, specifically One, with the Spurs lucked into, and then two, the Hornets. They know that player's off the board in Wembanyama. The rest of the board is up for grabs, and you can really dictate the draft. So three gives you a lot less control, but there are so many scenarios out there where the Blazers can add talent, they can add assets, they can add a player. So it's not cut and dry what they do with the third pick. And obviously, having a prospect like Brandon Miller be in this draft, who is considered a top 3 prospect, but also have legal issues, that throws another hurdle into the decision-making process, which I think also includes more scenarios down the line. So what I did, Sage, and I told you beforehand, make sure you have the Ringers mock draft up, Tankathon's mock draft up. I have 9 trade scenarios for you that all involve Portland receiving at least one current draft pick back.
Okay.
And why I wanted to have at least one current draft pick back, because I wanted to see who you would draft with Portland.
Okay.
With that pick. So a couple of caveats before we get going. You and I both know that Scoot Henderson is the prospect that we desire the most. In all of these scenarios, he is not available at 3. He is gone at number 2 to Charlotte. So he is removed from all of these exercises. So we take that.
Am I comparing the trade in terms of value to Amen Thompson? Like the value
or Brandon Miller, whoever you.
I think Amen's better. I think Amen's better by a while.
This is just these trades are just. I'm going to have you dribble, pass, and shoot.
All right, let's
dribble is yellow light. Pass, red light. Stop. No, green light. I'm letting that fly. Right. This is so not only how the temperature of how you're feeling on these trades, but then what would you do? Right. Let's say you get pick number 18, whatever back. Who are you taking there? And so why it's important that I had you bring up those mock drafts, because you're going to use them as a guide. And you can't pick a player. Let's say you really want Taylor Hendricks and he's going at 10 and you have pick 12. That doesn't work. Like, he's gone off the board. So the player has to be on the board on one of those 2 mock drafts for you to be able to select them.
Okay, let's do it.
All right. So there are 9 trades. I just kind of wrote them down as they came to me. So there's really no rhyme or reason why one goes first and the other goes. I will also give you my answers after I hear from you, but you didn't want any sort of preliminary notifications on the scenarios.
Ambush.
You just said ambush me. So I said, all right. So I've been wanting to do this for a while. These are the things that keep me up at night, whether I'm feeding my son or, just getting ready to go to bed. It's like, what would happen if, like, I am one of those folks that have internal monologues. So these are the things, if we're going for walks or whatever, I'm like, Olga's maybe talking about something else, and I'm just probably off in fantasy draft land. Like, what are you going to do with these scenarios? So I'm really excited to dive into this episode. I hope our listeners will enjoy it as well. This is all fictional mock trades. I love mock drafts. I love mock trades. Kind of live for this stuff.
I'm very familiar with tankathons. I wasn't that familiar with the ringers, and I'm like, okay.
Yep. So we reference, and the reason I chose those 2 is because we reference those 2 every time we do a Future Friday. So it only makes sense to keep them in the rotation as a guideline. So the first trade, talking to Orlando, 3, 4, 6, and 11. Dribble, pass, shoot. And what do you do with those picks? Because in all of these scenarios, the trade is complete. It's going through, and I want to get what you would do with those picks.
Here's the deal with me. I feel like 3 is very, very valuable, like we've stated above. I'm okay with that trade, but I would want to, like, could we add Wendell Carter Jr. and then put Nurkic to Orlando? Like, is there a way that we can manufacture it to get Wendell Carter and 6? Like, because that's if Scoot's gone, I would take that. But I feel like with what you're asking me, that isn't there, but I would do it. And let me look. Okay,
so are you dribbling or shooting it?
I would. Is there such thing as hesitantly shooting it?
No, that's dribbling. That's yellow light.
Okay,
You're cautiously you're proceeding with caution.
I'm proceeding with caution, but I would really like to score. What if Wendell's part of it? I do it in a second. But with this, I dribble it, but obviously I would. I'm taking my Boo Bear Jarris. He is
So you have
available on
Jarris.
Tankathon.
Okay, you have Jarris Walker at 6.
Yeah, he's available on Tankathon. He is not available on Ringer.
Who are you going at 11?
Let me look who's.
Because I think this, to me, is this particular scenario is where it gets into
This
no
is
man's
the.
land.
I have to
Because
hit.
my 8 of my 9 prospects would be gone by pick 11, and one of the prospects is Jordan Hawkins,
Yeah, I
and
know.
I don't think 11 is great value for him. So this is the hang up for
This
me.
is the toughie. Yeah, this is the definite toughie. In this draft, like in my perfect world, we trade Anthony along
This
I know, I
scenario.
know, I know, and
There's
it's tough.
more scenarios going.
I
We
know, I
gotta
know, I
keep.
know.
This is just one move. So think of it
I
in a vacuum.
I have man, I don't feel good about this. I have to check. It's between Grady Dick and Kaysen, and I think I'm going Kaysen for the defensive. Like we can put him in the Gary Payton role and have him develop more playmaking and shooting. So I would go Jarris and Kaysen Wallace with the 6 and 11 pick. But Grady Dick's an option because of the shooting, but I'm so tired of watching our defense be awful. So I feel like having a legitimate point of attack defender has his uses. Jordan Hawkins is available, but it is also in my head. But where's he getting minutes with Shaden having needing his Ant if we didn't trade him having his? So I felt like Kaysen as a backup point guard could be kind of like the Davion Mitchell of our team. But what did you have?
If it were me, I'm dribbling this very hesitantly, even more hesitantly than you because of the the problems at pick 11.
Uh-huh.
Just there's not great value there. Like I don't think there's value really from 9 to 20.
Mm.
Like I think you can get a guy at 24 who's just as good as a guy at 11.
He's just like a year
So
older.
yeah, so that's why I would dribble this, and I only dribble this if I'm not sold on Amen Thompson, but I am sold.
Yeah,
I would
I feel like
rather
a men's better
actually, you
than
know what? I've talked myself. I would pass this.
really
I think it's fair value. I would rather roll the dice
on a
on
men.
an Amen Thompson and Shaden Sharp backcourt than get Jarris Walker and maybe like a Bilal Koulibaly,
Yeah.
like who played with Victor Wembanyama. And like to me, I know you love Jarris. I still think he projects as a super duper high end role player. I think when you're Portland and you've only picked in the top three times in the past, 40 plus years, you have to take a little bit more of an upside swing. And I fear that if we trade down, we're going to relive '05 all over again. Because we got Martell Webster and Jarrett Jack. Like at the time, it's like, oh, okay. We didn't need a point guard. I I roll the dice on Amen Thompson, but because of the rules I stated, if I had to go through with the trade, I am taking Jarris Walker at 6. I think he's got DPOY potential, and then I would take a upside swing with Koulibaly at
I
number
just have never
11.
watched him, so it's just like
You know what, Sage? I haven't seen a lot of him either, but foreign players, great length, upside, athleticism. I automatically think of Batum because he's from France. I'll take that any day of the week. And I like fast risers in the draft for the most part. I like that aspect. And like I said, there's really I thought about Jet Howard, I thought about Jordan Hawkins, I thought about Derek Lively. But to me, those prospects are more in like the 20s, and not Hawkins, but we don't need Hawkins in that aspect.
he's a
So
huge luxury.
that's what I would do there. Second scenario, Portland and Toronto. Portland trades number 3, Anthony Simons and Yusuf Nurkic. Portland receives number 13, Pascal Siakam and Precious Achua.
I don't do it. I like men more. But if I had I wouldn't do this trade because I think that it it limits the options the Blazers have for future development, and it kind of lowers the ceiling to a certain length where a men just is a riser if we develop him right. So I wouldn't do this, but if I had to, so this is a I'm passing it, right?
Yep.
Okay, I forgot the rules of our game that we created. So yeah, I passed this one, but if I had to do it for the exercise at 13, I would go Nick Smith or
You got only one player. You only pick
yeah,
one
I'd go
player.
Nick. If he's gone, I'd go Kobe Buffkin, but I would go Nick Smith first.
Okay.
But I wouldn't do this trade.
I pass as well. Couple of things. Siakam is closing in on 30. You're also trading your only two tradable contracts in Anthony Simons and Yusuf Nurkic. So now you are firmly entrenched with a starting lineup of Dame, Shaden, Jeremy Grant, Pascal Siakam, and Precious Achua. I don't think that's a difference maker in the Western Conference.
Do
And
you
then
think
you
he wins
also
45?
it's hard because 45 means different to me than it means now. Like 45 in quote unquote my era was like slightly above average, but you're seeing teams win 45 and it's like
Fair enough.
home court advantage now. I don't know. I don't think it's a home court advantage
No.
team. I also don't love the fit with Jeremy Grant and Pascal Siakam. And you have a lot of depth issues. The same thing you have now.
And this year's never been healthy.
You just don't have a lot of pop off the bench. You don't have many other options to improve the team. But again, if I'm forced to make the trade, oh, and also Siakam's contract is really coming to an end very shortly. So then you have to face another
Super
scenario like Jeremy Grant. We're like, if the hope and pray, they say yes and want to stick around. But if we do have to make the trade, at this point in the draft, I am definitely taking Jordan Hawkins at 13 because you need some
shooting on the stamp team.
You need some shooting off the bench. You need a 6-man of the year type because Matisse Thybulle, Cam Reddish, Nasir Little, Jabari Walker, Trendon Watford. Where's the scoring there? There is no scoring. You need a player like Hawkins. So that's what I would do. But we both pass on that one. The next trade is just with Orlando again, but it's Anthony because they can absorb his contract for the number 6 overall pick. So you get the number 3 pick.
Do it.
So I want to know who you take at 3 and who you take at 6.
Oh yeah, I shoot that from like half court and it goes in. I take a minute 3. Man, this is pulling on my heartstrings because at one spot I think Jarris, and then I think Asor his twin brother. So this is where it's difficult for me. But
do you think it would be beneficial for the Twins to play with each other in the pros, or do you think they need to be?
I think they might need to be split up. I mean, they played together for so long, and I think that Amen, like what he is great at is handling the ball and being a decision maker. I think.
Do you think Asor doesn't get a chance to spread his wings and fly?
Exactly.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I think I go Jarris.
Yep, I think that's easy. I think you shoot that from half court, hold the follow through, take Amen at 3, take Jarris at 6, and I think it gives you the best of both worlds. You can take your upside swing with Amen Thompson, but then you also get a super, I think, safe pick in Jarris Walker, who was also going to fill a position of need down the road, playing that 4, giving you incredible defense and playmaking. So you've just got a hyper athlete in Amen who sees the floor incredibly well. You got Shaden Sharp, who is going to project to be your alpha. And then you've got Jarris, who can kind of almost fill in that Draymond Green type of role. So you can kind of see the vision in what Portland is doing with.
And we got a whole lot better passing too, just like
that roster overhaul.
Like the playmaking has improved. Like before it was just Damian Lillard and then Jeremy Grant's doing it for himself. Now we have Amen and Jarris who can both like we're building a Golden State-esque like passing lineup that I can't wait to see like Shaden off ball with Amen and Jarris running pick and roll and him dotting him in the corner for open threes. But yeah, I think the Twins in the NBA probably should be separated, but like my board serves ahead of Jarris, but Jarris, like all of our talent, if I took both Thompson twins, is in the guard position. Now we at least have talent in the front court.
Another trade with Orlando. This time it is Anthony Simons again going home to Florida. But instead of number 6, Portland gets 11 and Wendell Carter Jr.
Ooh, I do it. I think Wendell, as long as we have a place
Wendell's
for
a win
Yusuf,
now player too,
as
right? So
long as we have,
that serves the Damian Lillard agenda as well.
as long as Yusuf goes, because I think that's a lot of money
Yeah,
to put.
that would be a follow up move
Yeah,
for sure. But in
yeah.
a vacuum, this deal.
I think we win 50 games with Wendell at 5. So I would do it. Yeah, I would, because Ant is good, but he is also a humongous speed bump to Shaden Sharp. So I think
And
I would do that,
I think that's solid value for Anthony Simons. Like I think he's being undersold in a lot of these mock trades, especially when you're
yeah,
looking at like 3 and Ant for Pascal or Mikal Bridges. I'm like, beat back the truck up. Like Mikal and Pascal aren't worth 3 alone. And then you want to throw in Anthony Simons, a 20, 25 point per game scorer under the age of 25 who has handle and can
elite pull up
shoot the
shooter,
shit out of the ball. So yeah,
elite.
he's being super undersold. I think this is proper value. I would rather do 6 than get Wendell back, just because of the prospects here. So who are you taking at 11 then? You're doing this trade, right?
Yeah, I would do this trade because I think that it's a win now trade for Dame, but also Wendell's a very good play. He might
And
not
he's
be.
young. Wendell's
Yeah,
young.
he. I think he's like a top 50 NBA player right now, and the rec specs make him top 45. So I would do this trade, and what we get 11 in
Yes.
this scenario. You know what, bud? I think we lose a lot of shooting. I would take Jordan Hawkins because we just talked about how elite Ant is at pull up shooting. Now Jordan isn't going to be a pull up shooter; he's going to be a relocation shooter. But we are losing a shitload of shooting in this lineup. I mean, Wendell can shoot, but I would want Jordan Hawkins off my bench. What about you? Are you doing it?
I think Anthony to Orlando is the best fit. I think it just makes sense. I
Yeah,
think honestly, in any scenario, I can't imagine. So the only scenario in which Portland keeps Anthony, scoots off the board, you draft Brandon Miller, and Dame says he wants out. That way, you need some sense of a floor general.
yeah.
Um, so in any sense, I think there is a need to move off of Simons. I think he's more of a 2 than a 1, and yeah, I think that you need to clear the runway for Shaden Sharp to take off. It's not the worst trade in the world. I kind of feel how you were with that first trade. I gave you like I'm gonna dribble, but I'm leaning towards shooting it. So I'm kind of in that gray space. If I were to do this though, I see it's just that pick 11. It's just throwing me for a loop. All of the
I mean, if you do the trade, you're missing out on a shooting guard on the
so
roster.
we have a men. You got Shaden. You know what?
Shooting.
I would probably take a player like because just value wise, and we can't trade down in this exercise. So I think Jet Howard is too high here.
Grady?
I might go Grady Dick
Yeah.
because if you've got Amen and Shaden, you're gonna have good defense there. You could hide Grady Dick. He has the best form in the draft class when it comes to shooting the basketball.
And he's tall.
Along with Hawkins, he's tall. He's athletic. I think there's rebounding potential there. I think he could be a Michael Porter Jr. type of player.
I think he's a little bit better defensively.
Yeah, yes, without the back issue. So if you imagine Michael Porter Jr., slightly better defender, no back issues, you take that player. And I just think of all of the looks he's going to get off of the gravity that Amen and Shaden pull. Like you need floor spacers. Like not everyone can be a high level defender. So I would feel pretty confident there if that was the move. And then you also got Wendell who could play good defense. So yeah, that's what I would do there. All right. I think we're done with the Orlando section of the trades. Here is just an interesting one. I kind of looked at teams with multiple first round picks and maybe future first round picks, and I went over to Utah.
Mhm.
So Portland trades 3 and Keon Johnson. They get 9, 16 Minnesota's 2025 unprotected first and Ochai Agbaji.
I would say no, but the unprotected first is very sexy to me. But I think a men's just better, so I wouldn't do it. Yeah, I would pass that and allow for a fast break turnover on the other side. Like I a men's too good.
You need to who are you taking though with those picks though? 9 and 16.
Uh, yeah, even nine, like in both mocks, the players that I would want are gone. Like I would want Jarris, I'd want Asur, I'd want Taylor, and they're all gone on both mocks. So even that doesn't really make me happy. So at nine, ugh. Yeah, this makes me want to do it even less. Looking at like what's there from 9 to 15 is like, no, 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 no. I was thinking, would you trade Ant
No,
to?
no, no. This
I would
is
not do this,
then I
but
need to know who you would pick at those picks. We got to stay on trade.
uh,
So
Hasten
you've
Wallace.
already got young wings. You've already got young wings and Shaden and Ochai. So you've got that locked
Yeah,
up.
I'd want Kaysen. And then what was the other one?
16.
16. I I have Jet so much higher than Chris, so I'd go Jet. But I don't do this one because of what the 9 through 15 is.
Yeah,
It's
I would agree. I pass. If Ochai were maybe 3 inches taller, that's a different story. I still think it's a little bit not as great of a fit with Shaden. I think they're not similar, but I don't think Ochai does enough differently for that to be the needle mover. 2025 is cool, but you just don't know, right? Like
There's
it would
way
be
more certainty with
it's
this.
a fantastic asset, but you have a chance to build something special with Shaden Sharp
Yeah.
now. Um,
And then the
so I
picks right
would
now kind of suck.
yeah, I would pass just because 9 and 16 is a little bit rough with who was available. Um,
If you could get Taylor Hendricks at 9, would that?
Potentially.
I still think a
Um,
men's better.
yes. So at 9, I would probably take, and I'm not even a fan of this player, but just because value wise, I would take Anthony Black.
Yeah,
Hope and pray that he turns out
issues.
to be Josh Giddey. So you get some good size next to Shaden. And then 16, I go with Bilal Koulibaly. Um, Total upside picks alongside the board, um, length, athleticism. Try to go in a
Vision.
complete
Yeah.
opposite direction. But yeah, I don't love this trade with Utah. I don't think they're a great partner. I think when you look at it value wise, just like on paper, it's fine. But draft night comes and those players are off the board. Like
It turns
now,
into a people.
yeah, if like Cam Whitmore or Asar Thompson or Taylor Hendricks maybe slides a spot, then you can maybe talk me into it. But again, it's going to take a lot to pull me off of that number 3 pick. Here's, I think, a really fun one, especially with Scoot Henderson off the board. Portland and Detroit. You've got number 3 and Keon Johnson going to the Motor City. Detroit in return sends number 5, Jalen Duren, and a future second round pick. Dribble, pass, shoot.
Now you're gonna talk about one of the guards, and then I was gonna be excited. Um, Say it again for me.
3 and Keon for 5, Duren, and a future second.
Is it Detroit second? Because
Sure.
Detroit's second is like a
A
fucking
future
like,
second round pick. Future second round pick. Whatever. Just into the into the cosmics.
and did they take Brandon? Because you have
You just got to
Caden.
go. You got to go by the mock drafts. Who's ever there at 5, you can take in either of the mock drafts.
I I would think about it,
So you're dribbling this one.
but I wouldn't do it. I would think deeply and then pass it. But it's interesting. There's a huge
So
difference.
are you coming around to amend because
Yeah,
Asar's 3 on your board?
I think Amin's 3, the SARS 4, and then Jarris is 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I thought you would do this in a heartbeat to get Asar Thompson.
No, I think Amin's better than what this is.
What would what has switched? I mean, we just did our big board like
Yeah,
a
I
week
know.
ago. What switched, if you don't mind me asking?
The the potential of him and Shaden Sharp together just being a absolute powerhouse. So
Yeah,
I
it's something the NBA has never seen before
yeah.
from a backcourt perspective.
So I think that Amen's 3, uh, for me, like even if Brandon Miller didn't have legal issues, I think that Amen is 3 for me. Like just the potential of what he can do, and with Shaden Sharp, like both of them fully optimized is like I finally feel like the Blazers could be a championship team. If they make smart decisions throughout. Perfect world, we get him in and trade and get Jarris so he can be that third. But so yeah, I value Amen too much.
Now, if you looked at the Ringers mock draft, you could have said, "Yes, Sage, I do this trade and I take Amen Thompson at 6 because they have him going to Orlando."
That's just wrong.
I agree. I don't think he falls to 6 at all. So that was a loophole. Um, I would think long and hard about this one because I value Jalen Duren a lot. I wish we would have kept that pick that we traded for Jeremy Grant and just sent it over to New York itself and took Jalen Duren. But then you're
I don't
starting
think
to.
JD amounts to what Amen can provide you. And if I did the trade, I take my boy. I take Jarris.
Do you think Jarris and Jalen Duren can coexist in the same front court? Is that not enough shooting spacing?
I think
I
that
don't.
Jarris is. I believe in Jarris's shooting, so I think that it could work. It's not perfect, but I think.
But he's not like a Jeremy Grant floor spacer. He's like, if you leave me open, I might hit it. But he's not
I
someone you're
feel
running.
like he's better than that, though. I think that his shooting is good. So
Okay.
so I wouldn't do it, but I would definitely take Jarris. And then I take Jalen Duren to the damn shooting drill thing in 2K and have him, get +5 or whatever the hell. Like I think both of them need to be competent shooters, but I think as Jalen Duren matures, I think his range is going out. But again, I don't think it's better than what Amin and Shaden could do.
I dribble this one. I shoot it if the Blazers are dead set on drafting Brandon Miller at 3.
Yeah.
I'm more hesitant if they're looking at Amen. I really want Amen Thompson. But if they're like, we want Brandon Miller, I was like, no, let's do this. Let's do this trade. And I would probably take. See, this is a fun one for me because I think you get your center in Duren, and I think I like Jarris Walker. He's number 5 on my board. I don't know if I love that fit. I might roll the dice and go like Cam Whitmore here at 5. Just because he doesn't need all of his flaws, I think, can be negated in a sense that he doesn't need to be the alpha. He doesn't need to be the primary playmaker. He doesn't have to be the number one dog. Like, you can just let him go out there and just roam, right? Go roam, get in transition. You don't need to have a lot of isolation creations. You can just work with him, right? You're really banking on Shaden being that guy. So that's where I love Cam. Now, if you're drafting Cam to be a number 1, you're going to be in trouble because he does have tunnel vision. Yeah. Tunnel vision. He needs to fix it. But this draft is unconventional. And he is maybe one of the most unconventional prospects that I've seen. The force, the power, the second jump. The age. He's 18. He's gonna be 18 on draft night. One of only 2 prospects that are gonna be 18 on draft night. The athleticism with he and Shaden would just be phenomenal. So that's probably what I would do, but it really would depend on what direction the Blazers were actually going to go at 3. But I thought that was probably one of the most fun trades that I have here. Here is an unconventional idea, something that we discussed early on, probably right after the draft lottery results came out. This is the only scenario in this podcast where you yourself, Sage, get Scoot Henderson.
Oh, okay.
Portland decides they're not going to wait on Charlotte. They're not all this talk that, if Scoot comes, they'll trade him. They don't think it's a good fit. They already have Damian Lillard, Anthony Simons. Baloney. They want to go up and they actually want to trade for Scoot Henderson. They want to get the number 2 overall pick. Portland trades 3, 23, Anthony Simons. Charlotte trades 2, Cody Martin and Kelly Oubre Jr. What are you doing?
Oh yeah, in the second.
And this is like, you have no idea what Charlotte's going to do. Charlotte could just take Brandon Miller and you've just given up everything for Scoot. This is Scoot insurance. This is like it's like Scoot State Farm, right?
I actually was thinking this and I forgot to text you, but out of all the point guards as prospects, not as NBA players, who is ahead of him in recent memory? I can only think of one, and that's Chris Paul.
What's recent memory? I don't think Chris Paul was that highly coveted, but like he went 5th.
Yeah.
Or he went 4th, excuse me. Like Darren Williams went ahead of him. Like I think there was a true debate there. The point guards that come to my mind, and I wouldn't say Russell Westbrook. He was actually, in most mock drafts, Jared Bayless was ahead of him. When Seattle took Russell Westbrook, that I was kind of pissed because I thought he might have fell to Portland at 13 at that draft. It's odd that the point guards that I'm about to say are compared to Scoot, but Derrick Rose was highly coveted.
Yeah.
Ja Morant would have gone number 1 had Zion not been in that draft. And the other one is John Wall. Like John Wall was fabulous at Kentucky his freshman year and was the clear-cut number 1 player. Those are the 3 point guards in, I think, since 2000 that have been up there with Scoot Henderson in terms of hype and prospect potential.
And I think Scoot's better than all of them. The only, I remember watching Chris Paul at Wake Forest and thinking this is the best point guard I've ever seen. So maybe it's because I have this huge bias towards Chris Paul being my favorite player. But, Scoot's that guy.
I think of point guard prospects, like Derrick Rose is the only one that rivals Scoot.
And I said it many times that I think he's better than Derrick.
Because Derrick Rose was elite size.
Mm-hmm.
He had size on Scoot. He led Memphis to the national championship game. They should have beat Kansas that year. Like everyone wanted Derrick Rose. Like Portland was 1 lottery number away from landing Derrick Rose. Like that was the unconventional point guard at the time. And now those point guards are starting to become more conventional, which is like absolutely absurd. But I would do this. I think, and I would do this just because of how highly, like I said it, Victor's in his own tier, Scoot's in his own tier after that. Like that's tier 1 and tier 2. There's no other tiers. Like I think you have to really think about and if you're doing this, Sage, right, you're probably trading Dame, so you can recoup some of those assets that you had to give up, like 23 and Simons. And I know that is a hefty price to pay.
I value
seeing the interview, seeing the workout footage only reinforced that this kid is going to be a star, like potential MVP. You see this all the time in the NFL. Teams will overpay to go up to get the guy that they want.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in this instance, Portland might regret just waiting and seeing what Charlotte does.
Yeah.
Because that's, and maybe you can drive them down a cheaper bargain, but this is the trade that I don't think 23 just gets it done.
No,
and Portland doesn't really have any other. Yeah, so it's a tough pill to swallow, but I would shoot this one just because of how much I believe in the Scoot and Shaden backcourt, and you build from there. You have 15 years to get that right.
And we're talking about a men's potential, and I think Scoot has that high of a potential, but also has a very, very, very satisfying center and floor where Amen has a very absolutely frightening level of floor. He could be Keon Johnson. There is an absolute chance. I think Scoot doesn't have that scary potential of absolutely bottoming out. I think Scoot will always be good. Scoot was always going to be good. So I think that I would do everything I can to ensure that Scoot Henderson is on my team outside of trading Shaden Sharp. And I mean,
Agree.
Ant doesn't have a role with Shaden and Scoot. He just doesn't. So like I know that we talked about is how good he is. Yes, he is very good. He wouldn't be very good with Scoot Henderson and Damian and Shaden on the court together. So I would trade it. I would trade you could have added more and I would have still said yes. So yeah,
All right.
I'm all about Scoot.
The last two scenarios involve Oklahoma City because they have a plethora of future first round picks, young talent. The first one, outgoing, number 3, Keon Johnson. Incoming, 12, Santa Clara, Jalen Williams. And Philadelphia's 2025 first round pick, top 6 protected.
I still take him, man.
Okay.
Immense too good.
Who are you taking at 12?
And also 12 sucks. So who is my backcourt if this scenario takes place?
Shaden, Damon, Anthony. You still have Shaden, Damon, Anthony. You've all
okay,
those
so Jordan Hawkins isn't as.
And you have Jalen Williams at the 3 now too.
I'm taking Grady Dick. He's tall and can shoot. That team's gonna need wing shooters, so I'd go Grady Dick. But again, I'm not happy with that.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to not make you happy.
I know, it's all your fault.
If this was,
I think we got when we talked about Jalen Williams being a Blazer and us being okay with 3, we didn't know as much as we knew about Amen, Asur, and Brandon. Like now that those prospects are better than what Jalen Williams is. So I think that I don't make that trade.
I would probably not as well. Again, if Jalen Williams was 6'9", I think that's a different conversation. But we've been so small in the backcourt for so long, so small at other positions. I want to have some positional size. But if I'm at 12, I take Coulibaly, 6'7", but he has 7'3" wingspan. I think he can move up to the 4. I think you could run a really good lineup with he, Jalen, and Shaden, whatever who you keep at the point. The second trade is similar, very similar, but it also goes back to our last year's draft coverage, which we did a lot of, and fell in love with a lot of prospects in Oklahoma City. Took a few that we liked. So outgoing 3, Keon, Nasir Little. Incoming 12, Santa Clara, Jalen Williams, and Ousmane Dieng.
I don't do it.
Okay. Do you value Ousmane more than the Philadelphia 2025 first?
No.
I value Ousmane much more than that first round pick.
Watching
I had him very high on my board. He's young, yeah. Of course, there is going to be roadblocks for Ousmane. He's a ways away, but I think Coulibaly is as well. I think a lot of players in this draft are a ways away. So you have to.
I'm sticking with Amen on that one. If you gave me Chet, I would like it, but I still wouldn't take it. So is there anything else that you want to talk about, or
those scenarios wrapped it up? Basically, you're gonna have to blow us away to get the number 3 overall pick. I don't think we said yes to too many of those deals. I don't think we said yes to any deals that involved number 3. I think everything was just like Ant and 6 or Ant Wendell Carter Jr. and 11. So it's like we want that 3. Keep the pick.
Do you think Orlando would take Ant and give us, or do you think that Orlando would take 3 and Yusuf and give us Wendell and 6?
Oh God, yeah. Why wouldn't they?
Yeah,
I wouldn't do that trade.
I wouldn't either. But if it's Brandon Miller, I might. But I don't know, man. I just value 3 so much that it, you have to give me someone that's a top 20 player, not a top 50.
Here's the thing with me. If I'm the Blazers, I want if you're going to strike out, I want to strike out swinging, not looking.
Yeah.
And I think looking is trading down. You're letting somebody else make that decision for you. You're letting the umpire make that decision. Was that ball or a strike? I want to take my own hack and I want to say, this is the best prospect that can help us win with Shade Sharp.
Mhm.
Do your own diligence, do your own research, trust your scouts, and go down. If you're going to go down swinging. Like, have no regrets. And I think that's important. I think it's playing to win rather than playing not to lose.
Mhm.
Um, we've just seen too many times where teams that trade down get burnt. Um, anytime you're giving up the best asset in a deal, most of the time you're losing in that trade.
Mhm.
That's just kind of how it ends up working. Um, before we sign off, just want to quickly touch on the Damian Lillard. I don't even know what to call it. Saga, drama, whatever adjective or verb phrase you want to add to it. What do you think he gets out of giving all of these interviews? Because it seems like every week he's on another podcast, another radio show. I mean, whatever. Just and they're asking him the same questions, and he's candid, he's honest, but I think he's also smart enough to know that whatever he says, whether it's a one liner, is going to get taken out of context. It's going to get aggregated, and it's going to go to all these sites. And now, obviously, GMs know where he stands, and I think they smell chum in the
Mhm.
water, and they're circling Joe Cronin, and so I think it makes his job much more difficult, because he's already facing enough pressure to make the right choice with this asset, and now you add on the layers of your superstar saying do this, do this, do this. The media, whether he says he listens to it or not, I think it has an impact. And then you have fans who are just like myself, sick and tired about hearing the whole thing. Either keep him, trade him, whatever. But what do you think Dame gets out of this? Do you think he secretly like wants out because he's being so candid? Like, he could easily shut it down and say, "Hey, I'll do your interview, I'll do your podcast, I'll do your TV hit. We're not talking about the future. We're
This
not talking about trades."
he has the gravitas to dictate what happens in an interview. He just does. He has like fucking 5 million followers on Twitter. He's a top 75 player. He can dictate what is said in an interview. I've had to do interviews at radio stations a lot, and people that have a lot less followers, a lot less power in the world have had requests and demands of what they want to talk about. So I know for a fact that if he wanted to not talk about it, he could. Like, there's production meetings in which he talks to whoever's in charge of Paul George's podcast or whoever's podcast, and they talk about what you can and cannot say. There are rappers and actors who are way less popular than him that say, I don't want to talk about the LL Cool J incident. That ruined my career. Okay, we won't talk about the LL Cool J. So to see that Damian Lillard, a super duper star in the NBA, saying the things he wants to say it. If he didn't want to say it, he wouldn't say it. But and I think that this is like the 2023 version of what happened versus New Orleans with Anthony Davis, where like I felt like the media in terms of terrestrial TV was forcing New Orleans to react in trading Anthony Davis. I think this is more, like Dame has more creative control with podcasts, and he's still letting it happen. So I think he wants to leave, and I think that he doesn't want to be considered the bad dude. He doesn't want to be the bad guy of breaking up what he has in Portland.
And I think Portland would would be welcoming a split too. I think they
But
realize
they don't want to be the assholes that
you
trade
don't
away a
want to be
generational
you don't want to be the franchise that
Yep.
trades the
Yep.
arguably the greatest player of all time, easily the best ambassador to the city and franchise that has ever existed.
Mhm.
And Sage, we've said this since the playoff series against Denver. I think both sides would welcome a change of scenery. Neither wants to be the initiator, and it's going to come down to who blinks first. Like, they're playing a game of chicken. Dame's just happened to do it in public. I don't think it suits anybody, anywhere, any good. Like,
Yeah.
just chill. If you want to give an interview, just don't talk about it. Like, it.
Talk about boxing and talk about whatever, but the fact that he is choosing to talk about it means that he wants to not look like the asshole, but he like saying all this stuff, he could obviously like no no production manager is gonna ignore what he says. No one. I trust any professional dude, any professional manager of a podcast or engineer. If Damian Lillard's like, nah, let's chill on trades. I have built roots here. I love it in Portland. Let's not talk about it. They wouldn't be talking about it.
And to Dame's credit, he has said that he wants to be a Blazer, but also to Dame's credit or disc, whatever the opposite of that is, he has completely answered every other question honestly. So it's like you're kind of getting two sides of the coin there, and it's I understand his frustration. I would be too if Neil Olshey was my GM for my nearly entire tenure, but nobody backed him into a corner and said you can sign this mega extension that keeps you in Portland. Nobody also told him to advocate for Chauncey Billups as the head coach when he clearly has shown he's not ready to be an NBA head coach. Nobody advocated for him to keep Olshey. Like he could have went to Paul Allen and said, "Hey, I need a new GM." Nobody forced Dame to play with CJ that many years when it was clear they had a clear ceiling of what they could accomplish. So
Dame's an interesting dude too. So you could talk about boxing with him. You could talk about hip hop, all the music that
everything. Yeah.
So it's like if he was on the holy backboard, I don't know how much basketball we talk. He's an interesting, smart man with many interests.
Fatherhood, real estate, dealerships, music,
building roots in a city shoes. That isn't used to having.
He's just doing construction on a new home in Portland. Like there's so many things you could talk about. Yeah, and I just honestly I feel bad for the fans too because
they're not used to this.
We are now witnessing what Denver did with Carmelo, Orlando with Dwight, New Orleans with AD, New Orleans with Zion. Now Portland with Dame. Like it's tiring, it's exhausting. It's even if you don't seek it out, that information comes back to you on your feed, and it's not what we need to be hearing right now. Like let's be excited that we have this third pick and how can we build for the future. That's kind of where I'm at, but I just wanted to quickly touch on that before we wrap this one up. Your boys got to get back to work, got to give the baby a bath. But it was really fun to discuss these scenarios. I think we both agree 3 is the way to go.
Yep. And we'll be back soon. I think that there's a point guard that we have to really discuss because he's quite good, and I'm willing to trade the entire team in order to get him. So be prepared for a Scoot Henderson episode in the relative future. We will be back, and peace.